Camera Club. We got Jerry Stutzman, our president, and Rags Avery, our vice president. You guys have anything you need to say for Mr. President?
Yeah, I just want we just completed our monthly board meeting just a few minutes ago. And I just want to say how proud I am of the board members we have, the activities, the professionalism that we're doing. There's a lot of great things that are coming down the line for our membership. And just kind of keep in tune, watch the website, Facebook, emails, or whatever, but we're going to be communicating with you with a lot of great things. One of the other things too is the board has just updated the bylaws, and next month we'll have what we consider our annual meeting, which will unfortunately be by Zoom. We'll send out the bylaws for everybody to look at, and we're going to ask for your vote on it, and you'll vote by voting yes by not saying anything. If you disagree with them or have an error, see something wrong, you'll let us know. Then we'll do a vote that way. I'll explain that in an email. But there's a lot of great programs, a lot of good speakers coming up. A lot of these guys are really, really working good, and get a chance to get out there. If anybody has a chance to go out to Bonobo Winery, our members have a display out there. They'll be on this month and I think next month too. So a lot of positive things. Great club, great activity, great people. Enjoy the show tonight.
Rags is our vice president. You got anything else you want to add, sir?
Yeah, first of all, I want to welcome the attendees from the Northwest Michigan Camera Club collaboration. I see several of them like Rob Harold and others, so thank you. The other thing is, I'm not sure if we're aware, but our critique committee is having our annual May competition. So I did send out a MailChimp email to members, and the due date for submissions. Even if you haven't participated in the critique night, you can submit one image as a club member to our May competition, and the due date is April 26th. And you follow the guidelines for submission just like a critique night submission.
All right, thank you, Rags. I saw him. Oh, where is our discussion group? Jay, there you are. Jay, you got anything to talk about for discussion group, sir?
Yeah, the last discussion group will be May 8th. The topic is going to be one that was selected in a poll that we did of interesting topics for members, and it's going to be about Lightroom add-ins. I'll send out an email about this because I need some help. I can show how add-ins work with one example, but there are probably 50 add-ins, and it would be interesting to hear from members that use different ones, why they do what they do and how they like using them. So watch for that email, but May 8th, the usual time, 9 a.m. of the discussion group. Thanks.
And I'm not seeing any other board members. Anyone else have anything to say that I am not seeing you on my screen? Amy, there you are. Anything about meetups?
Yes, I will be posting something soon.
Perfect. Keep your eyes on the Facebook page and emails. You can do MailChimp as well, or just Facebook.
Pardon me?
Are you going to be sharing on Facebook only, or are you
Yes.
going to be doing MailChimp as well?
I'll probably do both.
Okay, so keep an eye on your emails and your Facebook for all kinds of exciting things coming up, including, I'm sure, an amazing meetup with Amy. All right, that is all we have for club business that I am aware of. Anyone else? One last time, any board members have anything they need to add? Seeing nobody, the chat is clear. All right, tonight I am excited for our program. This is our next to last program. Anyone in the northern Michigan area that isn't involved in photography, and I say this man's name, their ears perk up and they know who I'm talking about. Robert, I cannot say your last name right. I'm going to slaughter it, so I'm going to try. I appreciate you taking the evening to be with us. I will let you do your introduction because I cannot do it justice. Robert, the program is yours, sir.
Well, thank you very much. I'll go to a screen share pretty quickly here, but starting out, yeah, thanks for asking me. Thanks for the wonderful introduction. The last name is DeJonge, just like DeYoung, but it's spelled the old Dutch way. I got this good Dutch heritage, but I lived for 20 years up in Petoskey, so I got lots of friends up there. I actually spoke at the Traverse Camera Club, well, it was probably 12 years ago already. Did a little talk then, but I love Northwest Lower Michigan. I spent a lot of time at Sleeping Bear. So I'm just going to share with you some of my insight. I'm going to talk a lot about creativity because that's something that's near and dear to my heart. I mean, that's the reason I got into photography, is because I love being creative. So I'm going to try to do a screen share here, and I have this little presentation. Let's see. Okay, screen share. And give me a second here. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, sir. We got your screen. Thank you.
Great. For me, creative photography is all about having fun. If you're not having fun, then there's something wrong. So that's simple. That's kind of the bottom line for me. Just a little bit about me, try to making this real quick, and then I'll get to some images, okay? From the time I was a little kid, I loved to do things a little differently than everybody else. You know, if they were playing a game, I made up my own game and played it my way. And it's just always been, I don't know why that's been a part of me. I've always liked uniqueness or different things. Yeah, it's been 40 years of serious art making for me. I was a graphic designer and also did photography. It was for a nonprofit down in Grand Rapids. Most of the photography I did for them was documentary type things, but also did graphic design, did a magazine, designed a lot of other things for them. In fact, toward the end of my career, I was doing website design for them. And I started using a camera all the way back in 1979. Seriously, let's put it that way. I played around with it when I was a kid, but that's the time I really started to take it seriously. Made the transition into digital in 2002, bought my first high-end digital camera. I think it was all of 6 megapixels or something like that. And nature is basically my source of inspiration. That's always been. Do other things too, but yeah, nature is kind of the thing that really gets me going. And I always have seen my work as an interpretation of things, not necessarily just documenting things. So that's a little bit about me. You can find out more about me at my website, which I'll give you later. First thing you got to know is your equipment and your software. I spend about half my time out in the field getting images, about half my time playing with things in mainly Photoshop. So that's the way I like to interpret things. And the only way to, I think, to be really good at being creative out there is you really got to know your camera, really got to know your software so that that stuff becomes second nature. Because when I'm out shooting, I'm actively processing what my camera can do and what possible uses the software will have of the images I'm capturing. I consider myself kind of a collector of images, and I put them together in Photoshop. Very few of my images are a single frame from my camera. Most of them are multiple frames put together in different ways, or yeah. Number one on my list for really how to get creative, how to get inspired, is to just be a good observer. And this may seem obvious to a lot of people, but I find a lot of people, I've done, led workshops out in the field, And a lot of people run out to where they want to get pictures and just start clicking the shutter. And I think, and there are times when that's necessary. You know, if there's something that's happening real fast, you know, that's appropriate. But a lot of times it's important, I think, just to kind of take your time. You know, I usually like go find a stump in the woods or somewhere and just really observe. And by observing, it's not just visual, it's smelling, it's you know, listening to the sounds. And I find that if I just relax and be very attentive for, oh, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I start seeing things that I didn't see by just walking past them, or, you know, just stopping and looking around. I really feel like if I, you know, give myself some time, I start to see things I didn't see the first time around. And I also enjoy learning. I mean, I'm really, you know, a lifelong learner. When I see a flower or a bird or an animal that I've never seen before, first thing I do when I get home is look it up in my field guide. And I want to know about this stuff because I feel that it makes me, it makes my art better to know where these, what these things are and how they interact with each other. And those things are real important to me. So, you know, take time if you can, to just be a really good observer. I mean, there are times when I go out and I don't even take a picture. I don't even click the shutter. I just observe. It just really fills me up with good stuff to work with. And be patient. A lot of times I come back, you know, I load all my stuff up on Lightroom, got my catalog, you know, I go through them, pick out some ones to work with. But what I often find is if I give myself some distance from the time I've captured the image to the time I start working with it, um, I find that some things start to reveal themselves over time if I give myself some distance from the time I've actually seen it to the time I start working with it. So I think that's a good way to go. I have a little file folder called "These Have Potential" because sometimes I find an image that on its own it's not a bad image, but I think, oh, if I combine it with another image, like I got a really nice foreground in this image, but it could use a better, you know, sky. I'll pull a sky from something else I shot that same day that really makes the image better. And sometimes that takes a while to see that connection. So I kind of put things in a little file folder called "These Have Potential" and come back to them in a week or 2 weeks or maybe even a month. And load up on inspiration. Um, I'm an avid visitor to museums, to concerts. Uh, you know, uh, I really believe in the interdiscipline approach to art. I mean, I love music and dance and writing and sculpture and painting and all that stuff. I think that all can feed into who you become as a creative person, to see how other creatives have worked and built things and designed things. And I think so if you get a chance to, you know, go to a museum and see a show, or that's all stuff that feeds your soul, your creative soul. And one thing I found more recently is doing some collaborative work. I was contacted by a gentleman who lives down near Arcadia, who is a top-notch bass violin player, you know, the big bass viol. And he contacted me because he picked up my book at Crooked Tree in Traverse City and really liked my work and said, um, you know, I'd love to compose a piece to one of your pieces of art. And which we ended up doing. We actually got together. I went up and visited with him. We discussed a few pieces. He just sat down and, you know, uh, put together a piece with me. And I found that very inspiring. So look for places to collaborate. A lot of times visual artists aren't ones that collaborate real quickly. Musicians have to collaborate a lot of times. They're in orchestras, but visual artists tend to be kind of loners. And I kind of fall into that category, but I found that working with other people is good. I get a lot of feedback that way. And take chances. I'm not talking about, hanging off a cliff to get a picture. I'm talking about doing things, taking artistic chances. Experiment with new techniques. I find that really fun and exciting. The thing that happens oftentimes is that it fails, doesn't work right. But you learn something from your failures. So don't be afraid to get out there, try something new, do something different with your camera. It's really easy to, you get a picture that really works, gets a lot of praise from people, and you start finding yourself doing that kind of image over and over because it worked so well the first time. But you get really stuck in a rut, and that's the last thing I think you want to do if you want to be creative with your imagery, is keep doing the same thing. I find it, like I say, I'm a lifetime learner type of guy. I want to keep learning something new. And so the way to do that is to take some chances. Everything from capturing a new type of subject, or using your camera in a unique way, or printing it on something different. I mean, I've printed on metal and glass, and I even did a show one time where I just had a new high definition TV, and I showed my images on a TV on the wall rather than as a print. Just tried something new. And a lot of times you get rejected. People will say, "Oh, that was weird," and I say, "Well, it probably was, but it was worth the chance. It was worth the try." I think that in the long run, you're going to grow from experiences like that. As an artist that, brings your stuff into, you're putting your heart on the line a lot of times. Bringing your stuff and bringing it to a gallery, and they say, "No, it doesn't belong in this show." Yeah, well, that happens. You just got to work past that. And the bottom line for me is just have fun with it. I've been doing it for 40 years, and I still enjoy it a lot, and I like to share the joy. Yeah. And now I think I'm about ready to show some pieces. I picked a lot of pieces from Sleeping Bear because that's one of my favorite places, and a lot of you are real familiar with that. And I just want to show you some of the things that I do with my work. So I'll start out with some simple things. Now this was, a pretty standard shot. This was one shot. Of course, I used a very low f-stop so that I could get a real big depth of field all the way from the dune in front of me out to the Manitou Islands. But one thing I've paid particular attention to is shadow areas and stuff in my work. And I often will make adjustments, like bring out details in the shadows. You can do that really nicely with the high-end digital cameras nowadays because they store a lot of information that in the shadow areas that you normally, wouldn't be able to get. I grew up in the film age, using Kodachrome 25. And a lot of times if you exposed for the highlights, you lost everything in the shadows. Well, as we all know now with HDR techniques and so on, high dynamic range, you can bring things out in the shadows. One thing I like to do, like with this image, is I thought there were some really cool things happening in the shadows, and I didn't particularly like the color temperature of the shadows. So I selected the shadow areas, and I went to the color temperature and changed them a little to make them a little more blue, because I kind of like blue shadows. and turquoise shadows. Every time I think of Sleeping Bear, I think of how beautifully turquoise that water can be. And so I like to reflect that a little bit in my shadows. So in this particular image, I selected the shadow areas, just use the lasso tool in Photoshop and feathered around a little bit of the shadow areas and changed the color temperature of the shadows. Fairly simple image. One of the fairly simple technique. Here is a panorama, Sleeping Bear Point again. Now in this particular image, this is a multiple image panorama. Probably, I would guess maybe, I can't remember exactly, probably 7 vertical shots here that were stitched together in Photoshop. So I just go around, don't have the camera on a tripod or anything. Just start on one side, overlap each image a little bit, throw them into Photoshop, and Photoshop will stitch them together. So I created this really nice image in Photoshop. I really liked it, but again, I thought, oh, there's some really cool things happening in the shadow areas. So what I did is made a copy of that image, and then I applied a painting filter to the image and got a painted version of the image. But I didn't like the way the painting filter, what it did to the sky and the water, and so on. But I did like what it did in the shadows. So I don't know how many of you use layers in Photoshop, but I just took the painted image, laid it on top of the original image, and then lassoed everything but the shadow area, and then feathered that lasso and cut out the painting part in the highlights and the lake and the sky. And so the only place you see the painted part of the image is in the shadows. I really like the color combinations that the painting filter did in the shadows. So it's like I say, about a 7 vertical image stitch in Photoshop, and then painted just a part of it. And so some of it kind of has this painterly feel and some of it doesn't. And I'm sure there are some critics out there who would say, oh, you got to do one or the other. And I say, why? I think it kind of looks cool to have 2 different kind of feels to one work. That's me. Some like that, some don't. But like I say, I like to take chances. I like to try something new. That's what this image does. Again, this is at Sleeping Bear again, Sleeping Bear Point, winter. I just showed you this one because this is probably a, probably a 4-shot vertical stitch. And nothing says that the panorama has to be horizontal. Why not try vertical? And so I focus on the foreground, this really neat layer caking of the snow and sand that happens when the wind whips around the sand and eats away at the layers. You get all this cool layering effect. And yeah, so I took a picture down right near my feet, then up a little bit and up a little bit more and all the way to the sky on a beautiful morning, cold morning up at Sleeping Bear Point. Now, another thing I did in this picture is right by my feet, there was a bunch of grass that I thought was a little distracting, took away from the image. So if you notice, the bottom 2 swirls, the cake swirls there, they're the same thing. So what I did is take the one above there, lassoed it, copied it, and then enlarged it a little bit because it's closer to me and pasted it down below. So I got this kind of repetition of the same thing, just pasted it in down in the lower left. But I think it kind of creates a really neat rhythm to the piece. And it took away that grass down at the bottom near my feet that was distracting. So like I say, when I'm going out and shooting, I'm thinking Photoshop in my head. I'm thinking, this piece in the picture might be distracting, but that's something I can take out in Photoshop. I use the rubber stamp tool in Photoshop a lot to take things out that are distracting. Yeah, so that's that image. This is another thing that I like to do. This is autumn up on Sleeping Bear Point. And again, a vertical panorama. Well, what I did here though, is I changed perspectives as I shot. If you've been up on the dunes, you can see how the grass often rubs along the sand and creates these little, sundial type things. Well, that was right at my feet. And the only way I could really capture it well was with a wide angle lens. So I took a wide angle shot of the stuff that was right near my feet. Then I put on my medium zoom and took a picture of the middle ground where all those nice yellow poplars are. And then I put on my telephoto and took a picture of the Manitou Passage there, and you can just see the lighthouse out there in the distance. Well, if I had shot this all with a wide angle, you wouldn't even hardly see the island. So I actually used 3 different, perspectives and stitched them together in Photoshop to create one image. And it looks pretty natural, but it's actually using 3 different lenses to create one image. So again, who says you have to use the same lens for stitching or the same lens to create one image? Why not use multiple perspectives? It's not that difficult to do. What I look for when I'm stitching, this was manually stitched together because it was 3 different lenses. So I look for kind of bland areas where I can stitch, like right above the grass in the bottom there, and right before the poplars was kind of this grass area. That was an easy place to stitch. And then I think I stitched again right below those trees that were out there in the passage. And yeah, that's how that image kind of came together. Another one, and this one I really loved the foreground. The foreground was magnificent, evening sky, really showing those ripples in the sand, but there wasn't much action out in the Manitou Passage. And so I think it was maybe probably 20 minutes before I shot the bottom half of this picture, I took a telephoto and shot this lake boat going between the 2 islands. And when I got home, I looked at them all. And I said, well, I love the foreground of this one, but the passage wasn't that exciting. So I took and blended the back part of the top part of the picture to create a new image. And I really liked the way, so there's a lot of interest all the way from the foreground to the background. And here's an even more exaggerated use of perspective. I kind of, when I say I'm creative, I don't think I'm totally uniquely creative. I think I'm just borrowing ideas from other artists and from other ideas and adapting it to what I want to do. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Picasso. What did Picasso, what made him famous? Well, he would do this thing called cubism where he'd put several different perspectives in one image. He'd show the right side, the left side, and the front all on one flat plane. Here I'm kind of doing the same thing. I was up on a dune that was quite a ways away from the passage in the Manitou Island. And I love the foreground, the ripples, the blue in the shadows. And then, just a ways down was that ghost forest. If you've ever been up on Sleeping Bear Point, there's a really nice ghost forest, but that was quite a ways out. So I put on my telephoto lens, took a picture of the ghost forest, and then I really zoomed in on the Manitou Island and took a picture of the South Manitou Lighthouse. And yeah, it does look a little surreal maybe, but that's okay. It's what I felt about the moment. It kind of takes in three elements that I really love about Sleeping Bear Point, and that's, the ripples in the sand and these grasslands and the ghost forest and the Manitou Island, and they all can be seen pretty clearly and pretty definitively, where if they're all shot with a wide angle lens, you'd barely be able to see the ghost forest and hardly see at all the lighthouse. So I have fun with it. I always ask myself, why not? Why not, take elements and blend them together to create something new? That's the way I look at things. Here is an image from the Port Oneida area. If you really want to have a lot of fun, the Sleeping Bear has all these wonderful, wonderful old homesteads. And if you go back in the woods behind some of the homesteads, you'll find a lot of junk. In this case, I found a 1952 Buick. And this image was created with, let's see, probably 7 times 5, what is that? 35 images went into this image. Because what I did was I created a panorama of taking 5 shots for each vertical frame, and using, what do I want to say here? Bracketing them, because the problem is inside the car was pretty dark, and of course outside the car the trees and stuff were pretty bright, so I couldn't get one exposure that would work for all. So I did the thing with taking a bracketed thing, combining them to get some of the dark and the light and the correct exposure. So I took 5 images on the right, then moved over a little bit, 5 images there, 5 images in the middle, 5 images, all the way across. And so I could get kind of this really wide angle picture of the inside of this car, and still get a correct exposure for both the outside, the trees around this car, and the inside of the car. And then I also applied some painterly techniques to it to try to kind of enhance the color. But it was such a cool thing. I was seeing all these pine needles hanging in spider webs and all sorts of cool stuff. So if you want some really interesting stuff, go explore the Port Oneida area, all the old barns and the houses and the junkyards behind the barns and the houses. It's a great place to do some really creative work. Now here's really going off the deep end. This is actually one of my favorite images I think I've ever taken. And this, I happened to be in Edinburgh, Scotland, because I had a daughter and son-in-law that were living there for a while. And so we went to visit it, and we visited them between Christmas and New Year's. And the main street in Edinburgh is Prince's Street, and it's a big shopping place. So everybody was out shopping for the holidays. And if you know Scotland in winter, it's not real cold, but it's awfully very gray and rainy. And I knew, getting really, definitive, bright, sharp images would take a very high ISO. And I thought, well, let's go with the flow. Why not take some long exposures, and see what I get. Just have fun with it. just have fun. So I was walking down the street following this couple who were kind of arm in arm, and I was probably shooting 2-second exposures, shooting at a very low ISO and very small f-stop, and and I took a lot of images, and most of them didn't turn out into anything, but I just think this really turned out into a really fun abstract piece. You can see the guy's arm around his girl, and instead of seeing 2 legs of each person, you see just 1 leg. It's like they became one person. Excuse me. And I just love the color schemes. I love some of the geometric shapes. You can see some lights from some cars in the distance. Again, a very abstract piece, but it was because I decided to have some fun and play around and taking some long exposures. Yeah, that's what you need to do sometimes. Again, this is one of my favorite pieces. This one developed over a year, probably over a year and a half. Back in 2017, my wife and I took a trip to Normandy, France. My father was in Patton's Third Army in the Second World War, and I've always wanted to go to France and visit some of the places he had been. Followed his footsteps basically through northern France, and we got to a place in eastern France, a town called Metz. It's in the Alsace-Lorraine region, and they have a fantastic, gorgeous cathedral there. And I went inside that cathedral, and the cathedral is known as the Lantern because it has more stained glass per square footage than any other of the old Gothic cathedrals. So I just was really taken by this stained glass. So what I did is I created a 180-degree panorama of the overhead, starting in the front of the cathedral, taking a picture, then moving the camera up a little bit, taking another picture going up and up and up and over my head. And then, so this is probably was a combination of, probably 10 images, 12 images to create a panorama. They stitched really well in Photoshop. So I had this really gorgeous interior of this cathedral, which in itself was a great image. And then, maybe a year later, I was thinking about this image and I thought, I wonder what it would look like if I combined it with an overhead view of the forest canopy. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go up to Sleeping Bear, find one of my favorite trails, and find a place to take a picture of the forest. So I went up to Pyramid Point, if you're familiar with that, and I did a 180 overhead view of this trail at Pyramid Point. Took a picture right in front of me, then raised it up about 20 degrees, took another picture, another 20 degrees up, took another picture, overhead, again, probably 10 to 12 images. So I created this, again, a 180 overhead image of the forest. And that in itself was a nice image. And I thought, okay, well, let's combine them, see what I can get. Well, what I did is I had the cathedral picture, I pasted in a new layer the overhead of the trees, and then in these 2 layers, I don't know how familiar you are with layers in Photoshop, but you can increase or decrease the opacity of one layer on top of the other. So I decreased the opacity of that top layer, which were the trees. And so I could see where the stained glass was underneath it, right? Then I took my eraser tool and just erased areas where the stained glass was. Just erased it, erased it, erased it, erased it. So I could see most of the stained glass, some of the columns from the cathedral. You know, it was kind of trial and error. I did it a few times. And then I raised the opacity back up of the forest. And this is the image I got. So it's this combination of a Gothic cathedral and a forest. And, you know, it's just one of those things that kind of came together really well for me. You know, some of the trunks of the trees just seemed to fit right with the columns of the cathedral. Just a very, you know, and who would have thought, you know, combining a cathedral, something man-made with something natural, but why not? Why not try it, see what happens? Yeah, again, a very interesting way of combining. You can do this with a lot of things, you know, combine, used to be back in the film days, I used to experiment a lot with multiple exposures. You know, I would set my camera so that I could take like 3 or 4 exposures of the on one frame of the film, and you know, 90% of the time I'd get back something that was just kind of blah, kind of ugly. Well, now with digital stuff and Photoshop, you can have a lot more control over combining images. You can, you know, put stuff together. You can erase parts of the top image and then combine them like I did here. So much more control in the digital world. Again, up on Sleeping Bear Point, and this is really a kind of a surreal image, mainly because you notice if you look at the ripples in the sand, you can tell that the light is coming from both from the left and the right. So it's not real natural, and yet somehow I feel like it kind of works. And I was up on the dune when this big kind of cloud fog bank was coming in over and kind of partially blocked out the sun. And I don't know, I was just feeling in kind of a surreal mood one day, and I just combined this kind of ripples in the sand with this little bear piece, triangular piece in the middle, and then the triangular piece kind of points to the sun in the cloud bank. And you know, lighting wise, it looks off because, like I say, it's the light's coming from several different angles in one shot. But I like the composition. Some people may not. I think it's just uh, a fun thing to kind of put together. If not, it helps to teaches me how to work better with combining images. This was an image I took just, maybe 3 weeks ago up at Sleeping Bear Point again. I was up on a ridge and this huge cloud bank just started rolling in off from the west, off from the Manitous, and it had this very defined edge. And I thought, ooh, I see an edge in the clouds. I see an edge on the ridge. And I am going to go back down the ridge a little ways, put on my wide angle lens, and wait for the ridge of the clouds to kind of hit the ridge of the dune. So I'm, you know, always kind of looking for lines here, you know, so there's all sorts of interesting geometric lines going on in this shot. And, you know, I put it together. I lightened up the shadow areas a little bit because they were pretty dark. I lightened them up in Photoshop just selected with the lasso tool, the shadow areas, probably add a little blue to it again. I like blue in my shadows. Lightened it up. And also on that side of the dune that's all sand there, well, actually the side of that dune was not all sand. There were some tufts of dark grass and stuff in there, and I thought they were distracting. So I used the rubber stamp tool and took out those tufts of grass that I felt were distracting. You know, like I say, I don't consider myself a documentary photographer. I see myself as a interpretive photographer. So this is the image that I was able to put together. I like it. I like the way the geometry of it. Very interesting. This I'm still not sure about this. Some of it I like, some of it I don't like, but I tried it, and I think that's part of the fun of it. Try something new, try something different. I just I blurred, did some motion blur of some of the sky, and then I cut it up into pieces with the geometric lasso tool and put it back together in pieces. I guess I was again kind of feeling in a surreal mood, doing some painterly things with part of the picture and not in other parts of the picture, just to see what would happen. This image may not be successful. At this point, I'm not real excited about it, but it may give me some ideas for another image down the line. So again, try something new, try something different. Sometimes they work, a lot of times they don't, but it can lead to something else. It can lead to something new. So, have fun with it. Yeah, I guess I'm gonna I think I am done with my slides here. If you want to see some more of my work, you can go to michiganartisan.com. If you have questions you want to ask me, feel free to write me at michiganartisan@gmail.com. My work is in Synchronicity Gallery in Glen Arbor. If you're familiar with Glen Arbor at all, I think they probably will have 7 or 8 pieces this year in the gallery. I don't know if they've quite opened yet for the season, but you can go there and see my work all framed and everything. I have a book out, which I did probably, let's see, about 4 or 5 years ago now, focusing on Sleeping Bear. You can get it at the Crooked Tree Arts Center in Traverse City or Petoskey. Brilliant Books has it. The Cottage Bookshop in Glen Arbor, McLean and Eakins in Petoskey has it. Leelanau Books in Leland, Bay Books in Sutton's Bay. They all have it, and I think even Synchronicity has my book, the gallery. So if you want to see some of my work, or you can actually get it through my website if you want. So yeah, it's just a collection of images from Sleeping Bear. And I guess that's the end of my show. I don't know how I get out of sharing. Oh, here, stop share. Let's see if I can get up there. So I guess I'm going to open up for questions on how much time you were planning on.
All right, we're good until you're tired.
I know I threw a lot at you, so it may take a while for you to formulate some questions, and that's why I gave my email, so that if half an hour from now you think of something you want to ask me, feel free to email me at michiganartisan@gmail. And
I believe Rags has a question for you, Bob, if you
sure.
have a second.
First of all, thank you very much for this presentation. It's so fun to see how an artist interprets the use of a tool called a digital camera. So thank you so much. I do have one question, Bob, is on Sleeping Bear Dunes, there's a lot of our members that do enjoy photographing that area and have access to get over that part of the world. Do you ever do workshops where you might say, well, let's explore the Oneida area and let me, take you through some, artistic viewpoints of how you could use your camera to do this, or Sleeping Bear Point do you ever do workshops?
I have, yes. And if your club wants to organize a meetup, I'd be glad to meet you up there. And yeah, we can arrange that anytime. I've done it. I did the North American Nature Photographers Association had a 3-day event up there, which I taught at. I was artist in residence at Sleeping Bear way back in 2006, and did a workshop there as part of that. And then a few years later, I did one there in the Thorson barn, actually. Set up my computer in the Thorson barn and did a workshop. That was mainly on Photoshop. Yeah, I'm more than willing to share time with folks if they want to meet up there, and just I can, if you just want to see some of the cool places there are to go. I mean, I think I've explored probably maybe 70% of the park from the north side. I mean, you got 35 miles there. That's the thing I like about Sleeping Bear is you've got 35 miles of lakeshore. That's all national park. And a lot of people go on the main trails, like Pyramid Point and Sleeping Bear Point, and the Scenic Drive and those places. But there are a lot of other trails and places you can get to pretty easily that a lot of people overlook, and it's fun to kind of explore those places. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So Robert, there's a question in the chat from Alicia Erickson. She says, thank you. Do you approach the galleries to have work hung, or do they invite you?
I approached them. Yeah, and it's not easy. My experience has been that a lot of galleries feel that photography doesn't sell. And so they're more inclined to take oil painters or watercolorists or whatever. And so it takes a little bit of work to convince them. Like I think I worked on this guy at Synchronicity for about 6 years. I think the thing that really sold it was I had this book. And so I started out by giving them this book. I said, try selling my book. Well, they started selling really well. And once he realized that people really enjoyed my work, even though it wasn't a oil painting or an acrylic or whatever, so he tried, selling my framed artwork, and that started to sell. And I think he was surprised, but it did. So, sometimes you just have to build a relationship with somebody. It takes a while, and show them your work and show them that it can sell. And yeah, so sometimes it just takes a little bit of pushing and shoving a little bit to get them to yeah, see the potential in your work.
Right. So I got a question. Actually, I got two. One, you've got a book or a couple of books. How many books have you got done? And what is the process you have to go from concept to getting someone to print it for you to getting it out to people to actually be able to see it and purchase it?
Well, I had the advantage of being a graphic designer, so I had done publishing work. So the putting together of the book was something I could do. I had just have this one coffee table type book. I had the idea for it for, again, probably 10 years before I finally decided to tackle it. But I decided to focus just on Sleeping Bear, even though I have images from all over. I lived in Petoskey, so I had images from Wilderness State Park and Petoskey State Park and a lot of other places. but I just really felt like Sleeping Bear could use a really good coffee table type book of photography, and in different photography maybe. And so I felt like it was really a good place to focus on. So I started putting it together. And then I started looking at where other photographers had their stuff printed. And especially looked at Todd and Brad Reed, I'm sure you're familiar with, from Ludington. And they used a printer up in Manitoba in Canada. And it's just it's called Friesens. And it's an out of the way place. And it's really weird how they've become a big publisher of high end books. But they were really, I found them really easy to work with. The other option, if I really wanted to go cheap, was to go to China. A lot of places will print in China, but I like local. I like to stay as local as possible. I know Manitoba isn't real local, but at least it's North America. And anyway, so I saw that Todd and Brad Reed had used this company, so I contacted them. They were really easy to work with. They told me what sizes and what kind of papers they could put together for me and how much it would cost. Yeah, so I self-published. It was not cheap, but I took out a loan to pay for the printing. So it was a big leap of faith. But I just had 1,000 of them printed. But I found that after selling half of my books, I had it paid for. So, and it's been a good thing to promote myself. So I'm working on a second book actually, and I'm hoping that this one will sell even better now that people kind of know me a little bit. Yeah, and I only sell it. I'm sure I probably would have been sold out of it by now had I put it on Amazon. But I chose not to do Amazon because, again, I like local. So I just physically went into Brilliant Books and the Cottage Bookshop and all these places in the northwest corner there of the lower, and all these little local bookshops said, this is my book. I think it would sell really well here. I'm not selling it on Amazon, so if people want it, they're going to have to come to you. And they like that idea. So, yeah, that's how so every time I go there to do some shooting, I also stop at the bookstores and how many you got, you need more. And yeah, some of them buy them outright, some of them buy them on consignment. So, yeah, I've been very happy with it. Has it made me buckets of money? No. But it's been fun. It's introduced me to a lot of other photographers, a lot of other people, very interesting people. So that's cool.
All right, Robert, I got another question in our chat from Lori Cleland. Robert, did you set it up through Photoshop or another publishing program?
I used InDesign was the, I started working with a Mac computer back in 1986. And at that time, the first real publishing program was PageMaker, and that evolved and evolved and evolved, and now it's InDesign, and Adobe owns that. So I have that suite. I have Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, and Portfolio, which is my website. Is all done through that creative suite in Adobe. So yeah, the images of course were manipulated in Photoshop, but then I placed them on the pages with the text in InDesign.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, Bob, I've got a question. This is Jay.
Hi.
So we all love northwestern Michigan. That's why we live here, of course. But I'm curious, with the style of photography you do, is there another place in the world that you particularly like or you've shot much work in?
Oh, man. I've been around a little bit. Um, I take the outlook that any place can be interesting, from, inner city places to, way out in the outback somewhere. I had the fortunate, I was fortunate to go to Africa, did a safari in Africa, really enjoyed it. Um, been to Europe a couple times. Back in 2017, I was out west. I did the Badlands, and I really enjoyed the Badlands. It was really kind of cool. There was something about that I really enjoyed. I've done 5 artist in residencies. That's a great way to get to places and get to places cheaper. I did the first one I ever did was Sleeping Bear, the Glen Arbor Art Association group there. Then I did Arcadia National Park in Maine. That was a 3-week artist in residency. They give you a place to live for 3 weeks for free. You just have to pay them back with doing a workshop and giving them a piece of art when you're done. That's the way most of them work. I did uh, Petrified Forest in Arizona. That's a very unique place, very interesting. I did Porcupine Mountains on the Upper Peninsula, and I did Isle Royal. And I have to say, Isle Royal was phenomenal. They give you this cabin that's 2.5 miles down a trail from nowhere. And I was there for about 2.5 weeks and just had the time of my life there. I'm not sure that I produce any fantastic images, but I think it was real inspirational. And I think the inspiration I got from that carried into some of my work I do at Sleeping Bear. So, so artists in residencies are a great thing if you can get in. I mean, I applied for the Isle Royal one, I think 7 times before I got in. So don't be discouraged. Like I say, artists have to face a lot of rejection. And believe me, there have been many shows that I haven't been able to get into. Artists in residencies I've applied for, I haven't been able to get. But you just got to keep trying, and you know, judges are funny creatures, and they have their biases, and that's the way I always look at it. Some people really like what I do, and some people don't, and that's fine. So I try not to get too excited when I get accepted, and I try not to get too down when I get rejected. It just, like I say, I have to make it fun for myself and keep it being fun. It's not about, do I make a show or do I not make a show or whatever. It's just about, do I have fun when I'm out there collecting images, and do I have fun putting them together in Photoshop? And yeah, I do. So
Robert, you said you've done a couple of artists in residence. I looked into 1 or 2, and I'm sure some other members here have. You got any, since you've actually been accepted and done them, you got any advice to those of us who have looked into, thought, or hope to do it, on how to, other than being persistent, what to consider when you're sending in the application?
ooh,
Had to give them up a tough one for you. Couldn't give them all the easy balls for you.
yeah. Yeah. I would say just being totally honest. I think most people and you never know who's really judging this stuff. Sometimes it's somebody that's actually an artist. Sometimes it's just some park personnel. And so, that's what makes it hard. You don't know. So I just, I tried to be just very blunt about who I was, and that I like to interpret nature, not necessarily just document nature. And I think sometimes that probably disqualified me right away, and other times people like that idea. And yeah, all you can do is be, and maybe show a diversity of stuff that you've done. Don't show them all the same kind of thing. Say, hey, I've done some macro work, I've done some grand landscape work, I've done some underwater work, whatever, drone work, just say, hey, I've got a lot of different experiences. I think they, and just, I think emphasize that you're self-motivated, because a lot of times they give you a cabin and say, have at it. And you've got to be the one that really pursues the images. So I think if you tell them, yeah, I'm really self-motivated, I'm really eager to explore this new place, and I think it has a lot of potential, and these are all the diverse things I can do. So
basically what you're saying is people are involved, you don't know who's going to be looking at, so it's a crapshoot.
it really is. It really is. You just, and like I say, that's why the persistent thing kind of keeps on, and if they see that you really want it, I mean, the Isle Royal thing is, a really popular one, obviously, because it's a cool place, and they pay for your transport out there and back, and provide you with a place, which means they have to provide you with some fuel and stuff to cook, and to, the place I had a propane stove and a propane refrigerator.
Oh, wow.
And the water I drank came out of Lake Superior. They had a big gravity feed filtering system where you just poured a bucket of water from Lake Superior in a tub, and it filtered overnight, and the next day you had a couple gallons of water. So yeah, I mean, and in my case, of course, it's a lot of natural areas, so tell them that you're used to being outdoors and you like the outdoors and are pretty self-sufficient. I think that goes a long way.
Alicia Erickson said too rustic for her. That leaves one more spot for me then.
That's right. Well, I don't know if you heard about, there's an artist in residency on a place called Rabbit Island. There's this little island that's off the Keweenaw, and I thought that really looked impressive. So I applied for that this year, and I found out that I think they had 3 slots, and they had 900 people apply.
Wow.
So your odds of getting in there were pretty slim.
So Ann Burl asked, I think I said her last name right. If I didn't, I apologize. How do you find artists in residences?
Google them. I just do, the national parks. A lot of the national parks have their own artist in residence programs. So I would just Google national parks and artist in residence, and a bunch of them will pop up. There also is, what I think it's called the National Park Foundation, and they handle the artist in residencies for a number of parks where they don't want to mess with it themselves.
Right.
And a lot of them, they have a $35 or $25, fee. So it can get kind of expensive if you apply to a lot of them. But yeah, I just look at ones that are of interest to me. And oftentimes I look for places that are kind of out of the way, that aren't, I'm like, I wouldn't apply to one in, even though I think Yellowstone is cool. It's just too busy and too, overshot, in my opinion. So
Right.
I kind of look for those places that aren't often talked about or seen. Like I say, from the time I was a little kid, I was always big on doing stuff different than everybody else. I don't know why that is, but
So just for clarification for everyone that's tuned in, it's artists in residence. You're staying there. It's not artisan. It's artists in residence.
yeah, artist in residence. Artist in residence.
And
And
like the Porcupine Mountains, when I applied for up there, it's through the Friends of the Porkies. So
Right.
each park is a little different. And
Yeah, and that one's a state park. That was one of the few that was the only one that was a state park rather than a national park.
that cabin is so cool.
Oh, it is incredible. Had a wonderful time there. That's a beautiful, beautiful cabin.
Now, when you went and did some of these, was it a solo trip only as far as what the rules were? Or could you bring a guest or bring a family with you? Is it, what kind of rules are you aware of?
They were all different. Yeah. Isle Royal, they actually gave you 2 cabins. So when I found that out that I was going to have 2 cabins, there was just one of me. I invited a friend of mine who's a pretty good photographer from Grand Rapids area, and he joined me I was there for almost 3 weeks, and he joined me for a week. And my wife came for a week actually, and it ended up being a day longer than a week because the day she was supposed to leave, the boat couldn't make it because it was too wavy. So, yeah, so that was, and other ones really discourage you from, they want you to concentrate on doing your thing and not entertaining somebody or going where somebody else wants to go or whatever. It all depends. I mean, when I was at Petrified Forest, that was totally a solo. The cool thing about that one was Petrified Forest closes its gates at sundown and doesn't open it up until sunrise in the morning. And the cabin I was in was in the park. So I had the park to myself from sundown to sunrise.
I think Rags is
So-
writing down some crazy wicked notes. He wants to go have that park to himself all night.
And so it was really cool to, I'd get up, 2 hours before sunrise and go out into the park and go on these places and there's nobody there. And, yeah, just incredible place. And you really got to pick the brains of the Park Service people because they'll tell you where some cool places are. That's what I found right away is just, and even if you're just visiting a park, a lot of times if you ask questions, you'll find the cool places. So
Dave Fox has been unbelievably quiet. I can't believe he doesn't have a question tonight. Oh, I thought maybe he had one.
well,
Oh.
sometimes it takes a while to formulate a question. So you can always write me.
I am here. You hear me?
Got you, sir.
Great presentation. I love your creative use. So it was great to see and really appreciate your input.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's the way I approach things. May not be the way other people like to approach it, but yeah, I find a lot of joy in just trying new things and trying different things. And
Yeah, you gotta stretch yourself, and I think that's probably the biggest thing I like about it is, especially during the beginning, is experiment, test. Try new things, stretch your wings.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
You don't want to be doing what everybody else is doing all the time if you really want to excel and build and make real art.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Great, thank you.
And Dave, while we've got you on, I didn't see you earlier during our open meeting. You got anything to talk about as far as I'm drawing a blank on what your shows, any shows going on?
Well, we have the display, the exhibit out at the Bonobo Winery right now, running until the end of May. So if anybody wants to get out there and see that, it's a great show. We have about 18 pieces out there. We were hoping to have a reception, but I don't know if it's going to happen. I haven't heard back yet. We were contemplating the 25th this month on Sunday. I'll get an email out if that is going to happen. And I'm working on trying to find some other spots to have exhibits, but right now things are pretty locked down yet. So, we're working on it.
If I
Michelle
can't interrupt,
Rochelle Stark has some work on exhibit at Black Market Coffee down on Hall Street. So if any of you get a chance, it's a beautiful black and white work. So I would get out and look at that. And then Rags had mentioned the youth art and photography show at Crooked Tree in Traverse City. So if you want to go experience that, it'd be a good idea.
So Dave, I just want to reiterate, Bonobo has done a great job letting us in there. I think it's important that we go out there, stop by, have a glass of wine, and thank them for having a Traverse Area Camera Club in there so that they can
Yes.
see a return on having us out there. I also encourage everyone like you did to stop into Black Market Coffee. Tell them you appreciate them having one of our camera club members hanging on their wall, that we come in and support our people, and that may help more of us get in there. And they might spread the word about the camera club to their people, which will help us get into other groups. So thanks for bringing that up. And the Crooked Tree Arts Center has been an amazing partner with us for several things. So anytime we get in there and support them, that's a great thing as well. And let them know we came from the camera club because Reg sent us. He needs a little boost every now and again. They don't know who he is, I don't think. Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. DeJonge? Anybody have any last minute announcements? Otherwise, I think we're just about done for the evening unless Mr. DeJonge has anything he wants to add.
Nope. Like I say, I'm willing to answer your emails when I can. And I'll just put another pitch in here. There is a show opening this coming week in Petoskey at Crooked Tree. And the title of the show is Great. And it's featuring stuff from the Great Lakes. And I happen to have 2 pieces in the show. But there's it's all different art forms, not just photography. So you want to see a good show. That's their first in-house show that they've done in a while. They're kind of opening up with limitations, but you actually can go in. They limit how many people can come through at a time, but it's a good show.
Thank you. And I think that segues into one last thing we should probably announce. We have worked up kind of a consortium. We got some visitors here from other camera clubs that are, because of that, a membership in a Traverse Area Camera Club allows you to attend these other club presentations like we had tonight, like it allows them to come here. It's always great to have this extra opportunity. So that's a little bonus of being a camera club member. Make sure that you're watching a Traverse Area Camera Club member or one of the members of these other clubs that we've partnered with. Rags is going to be sending out emails throughout probably the next year on different things we've got going on. Rags, you want to touch on any last ones, any information on this that I may have missed on our consortium that we've got going?
Yes, the next opportunity for Traverse City area members to participate in one of the Northwest Camera Club collaboration groups presentation. The Manistee Club is going to have Brad and Todd Reed doing a presentation in April 27th, I believe. And I'll be sending information out through our MailChimp to our members.
And oddly enough, that was one of that was 2 people that Mr. DeJonge mentioned in his presentation. So they must have a little bit of clout in the photography world if our presenter is talking about another presentation or another presenters are going out. So I can only imagine it's going to be a presentation you're not going to want to miss.
Yeah, Todd and Brad Reed are great photographers.
And Todd, I believe, is a retired coastie. Just saying, just so you know.
So Andy? Just a quick-
Rachel Rochelle, there you are.
Yeah, sorry. So he had mentioned the show in Petoskey. That is great. I have a photograph in there as well. If you have one of your camera club members in there too. So just
Awesome.
Heads up. Yeah, it was fun.
And like I said, mentioned before, Crooked Tree, not just here in Traverse City, but Crooked Tree across Petoskey and Traverse City has been great supporters of photographers in our club. We have one of our board members is associated with the Crooked Tree and their board and has done great things to help us out here locally. And it's great if we can go show them some support and make sure we mention something about how awesome Rochelle's picture is. So maybe they're gonna have more of us from Traverse City invited up there to partake in that as well. And I'm
Good.
sure if it's for sale, she'd love to have you buy it. That's all I've got. I don't see our president to close out the evening. No more questions in the chat that I see. Oh, wait, is there any detail on what type of board position it is that is open? Oh, I know what you're talking about for our Rochelle. You're talking, is it Alicia or Alicia? Alicia Erickson asked that. Are you asking about the Traverse Area Camera Club board position that's open?
Yes.
Yes.
So what I would suggest is, Alicia, just contact me directly. And I'll be happy to talk through with you what our needs are for the next couple of years as a board member, okay?
Awesome. With that, I don't see anything else this evening. I'm going to go ahead and close out this meeting. I'm going to keep the meeting open for a couple of minutes here. If anyone wants